Hi guys. So I wanted to do a video showing the settings I used in the patch within Helix that I used in my last upload. You can watch there. So without further ado, let's go through it. So first and foremost, input. It defaults to multi. I switch it to guitar. I turn my input gate on. I bring my decay down to 10 milliseconds, tightens it up. I don't know whether you have to do that, but I do it. Doesn't matter. First block is the Scream 808 block, which is, modeled after a Tube Screamer. Gain, you will see, all the way down to 0. The tone is at 6, and the level is at 10. Now, the level and the tone is something that I will periodically go back to and adjust depending on how it sounds. The next block is another noise gate to kind of clean up any of the residual fret noise and whatever bullshit that gets added by adding the Tube Screamer. And it's the same thing. The threshold, I believe, is the default. I bring the decay down to 10 milliseconds, just like the first one. And that's that. Amp model. Peavey Panama, which is a amp model of the Peavey 5150, if you don't know or weren't able to figure that out. Pretty straightforward. If you look at this, it does look pretty scooped, and I don't know if it necessarily sounds scooped. But, take these settings with a grain of salt, and you want to use your ears. First and foremost, I got, how many times have I said first and foremost? The drive is at 2. Typically with these kind of tones, you don't need a ton of drive. I think the highest I get is 5, and that's using maybe the Badunk amp model. But anything lower on that one, it just kind of loses its balls. The bass I have at 6. The mid is at 2. The treble is at 4.5. The presence is at 8. The presence is at 8. Channel volume is 7.5, and the master is at 4. I believe that's the default. Now, something interesting that I did on this one is I took the sag, the hum, and the ripple, and I dropped that down to 0. It seemed to do something. I'm not entirely sure what. It tightened it up. It cleaned it up. And that's something that I've been kind of experimenting with. I know if you raise the sag, it's basically a form of compression, for lack of a better explanation. But you can look it up, and there's some pretty good videos out there, at least within the Line 6 Helix. And I think the bias and the bias X are at their default spots when you load this block up. And the resonance, again, is something that I will adjust periodically as I'm sculpting the tone. I have an inactive IR block. I decided to use everything within the Helix to make it easier for other people to duplicate. Typically, I'd say 99% of the time, I'm using own hammer impulses. But like I said, on this one and a couple of the other videos I have, I wanted to kind of keep it within the Helix. So that brings us to the cab block, which is a dual cab block. Both cabs are the exact same. It is the 4x12 Uber T75, an Ubershaw 4x12 cab with T75 speakers. And basically all I did is just use different mics. The first one is a 57 dynamic, which is a SM57. I have it right up against it. 1 inch, that's all the way down in Helix. I have no high cut and no low cut, and the level is at 0. The other one, I used the 121 ribbon mic, and I backed it off to 4 inches within Helix. A bit of a low cut at 80 hertz, and that's about it. Everything else defaulted. And that yielded some pretty good results here. I'll take this EQ off. Now the EQ, it's just to tighten it up, clean it up, get some of those resonant frequencies typically what I'll do is I'll monitor through my DAW, my digital audio workstation. I'll monitor through it. I'll add an EQ to that channel, and like a fab EQ seems to be the best one that at least I found that for this kind of thing. And I'll find some treble frequencies. And once I find those, I will then go back into Helix and add an EQ block and do a little more shaping. Again, so it's like I want to try and get the best tone that I can right out of it without having to do too much processing within my DAW. I don't know, just kind of make it a little more simple. So I used the 10-band graphic EQ, and I just scooped away some of these treble frequencies. So 125 hertz, -2, 250, -0.8, 500, -1.6. And then it looks like I added a little at 2K, 0.9, and I added 2 dB at 8K to kind of, you know, brighten it up, a little bit of air. That's it for this one. Sometimes I'll throw a reverb block on there with like a room reverb, really kind of set it low, like 10, 11, 12%, just to get a little bit of like that room sound, so it doesn't sound so choked off and tight. But for this one, I didn't do that. And then I did do a little post-processing in the full mix. That's something maybe I can go over in the future. But for this tone, that's all I did. That's all I have. I hope this helps you guys kind of get started. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Like the video, please. If you want to not like it, that's fine too. I don't care. And subscribe if you haven't yet. You know, I try to do a video every week. Sometimes I fall behind, but I try to make them on like different guitar tones and just things to get people started with this Line 6 Helix. This thing is awesome, and just want everybody to know how cool it is. So until then, I'll see you in the next one.